Around this time last year, I was playing through Persona 3 Reload, a game that doesn't have a lot in common with Lies of P gameplay-wise, but has a ton of overlap with motifs and symbols. And honestly, the protagonists aren't exactly polar opposites in the looks department. Persona 3 Reload was the first game I played after putting down Lies of P, so naturally I made some comparisons. Lies of P is a game that is absolutely drowning in the occult and Western esotericism. The references and themes are just everywhere. I mean, the main bad guy faction is alchemists, the main character's name is Sophia Monad, and the upgrade materials are based on lunar cycles. It's not subtle. Something that often goes hand in hand with these types of things is tarot cards. Tarot plays a central role in Persona 3, so having them front of mind made me wonder, why didn't Lies of P make reference to tarot, especially given the setting? The thought bugged me and I started digging, looking for a reference that may have been a bit less obvious. And after shuffling through it a bit, I think I have found a connection to the cards. It's just not face up. Tarot cards, in the context that I'm talking about them, are a deck of cards used in divination. There are variations on the decks used, but the Rider-Waite deck is the most widely used version, and the version we care about for this video. The deck is comprised of 78 cards, 22 Major Arcana, and 56 Minor Arcana. We'll be focusing on the Major Arcana. The Major Arcana are numbered 0 through 21, starting with the Fool and ending with the World. Apart from being associated with a number, each has unique symbolism, imagery, and meaning. The card can also have another meaning if it's dealt upside down, which is typically called reversed. This can be the opposite or just the negative side of a card's meaning. The Major Arcana, in order, tell a story known as the Fool's Journey. The Fool is the protagonist, and each of the Major Arcana is a stage in the plotline. Each Arcana comes with challenges to overcome and lessons to learn, and the Fool comes out in the end as a complete person. It's a metaphor used to tell a transformative tale of personal and spiritual growth, while simultaneously explaining the meaning behind the 22 Major Arcana. Persona 3 is openly based on the Fool's Journey. The main game mode is called The Journey. A teacher actually gives a summary of the Fool's Journey as a lesson, which I'm going to quote at times during this video, and you fight bosses outright named after the Major Arcana in order. Well, 1 through 13 anyway. 14 through 21 requires some explanation, but as much as I'd love to dive in and analyze Persona 3, that's not what we're doing here, and I don't want to spoil that game in this video. Thinking about this made me wonder if Lies of P might be the same, just a bit more subtle. Of course, thematically, both Lies of P and the Fool's Journey have the same destination of finding one's true self in the end. But there's actually more to it. There are 14 bosses in Lies of P you get an achievement for defeating. The first 13 are represented by the Major Arcana 1 through 13. The way these 13 bosses in order line up with the cards in order is uncanny. The 14th is very special, so the events around that boss represent 14 through 21. Lies of P is a Fool's Journey, and I'm going to go through each Major Arcana of the story and explain how they're represented in the game. Obviously, from this point forward, there will be heavy Lies of P spoilers. The Fool is interpreted as the protagonist of the story. It represents the beginning and suggests infinite possibilities. The Fool is a soul in search of experiences and learns with every obstacle overcome. Every one of us is a fool on our own journey, but in Lies of P, this is Geppetto's puppet on his path towards becoming a real boy. The Parade Master is the magician. Upright, it represents action and initiative, but also immaturity. It can symbolize talent, willpower, and resourcefulness. Reversed, it can denote trickery, unrealized potential, and madness. We can see both sides of this card for him. He was apparently a talented entertainer before the frenzy, and didn't get to realize this potential with the festival being cancelled. He has a "the show must go on" mentality to a fault, as noted in his ergo. And messenger or not, he is trying to trick you into getting onto a carriage to Toyland, much like his book counterpart, the Coachman. Also, ripping his head off to fight you could be seen as madness, or resourcefulness, depending on how you want to look at it. Interesting to note, the first thing you do after overcoming the magician is learn to lie to get into the hotel, which again could be seen as trickery, but also as resourcefulness. The Parade Master also drops the first quartz you can find, an item used to unlock abilities. The Fool seems to have grown in line with his first obstacle and learned to take action for himself. The High Priestess represents contemplation and inner knowledge, intuition, secrets, wisdom, and inner voice. The reverse of this arcana being seen as being overly enthusiastic to act on your own instinct. This fits the Mad Donkey to a T. His main motivation for assailing Geppetto is his gut is telling him who is responsible, and while he nails it, he acted recklessly, and it cost him. The Mad Donkey is really the first big clue that Geppetto isn't a good guy, and outright drops one of the bigger twists of the game long before it comes out in the story. Geppetto's puppet has his interesting little bout of hearing voices right after taking him down. The first hint of carcass monsters also lies just ahead. A reward for defeating the Mad Donkey is also the assembly tool, which allows weapon assembly but reads, "When dealing with a non-human enemy, it was necessary to do away with common sense." In other words, overcoming the High Priestess gives the Fool hidden knowledge and a tool that gives him the ability to use and see things for more than what they appear to be on the surface. The Empress represents motherhood and the life it brings forth. Also fertility, nurturing, harmony, nature, and pregnancy. Reversed is basically the opposite: infertility, negligence, disharmony, and an empty nest or miscarriage. The Scrapped Watchman has lost his children and is far from harmonious when we come across him as a result. The Empress is often depicted as pregnant, and Murphy's humpback could even be seen symbolically as an inverse pregnancy. Of course, the Scrapped Watchman was very much an upright representation of the Empress at one point, given his relationship with the children of Krot, Zack, Sophie, Eric, and Toma. Speaking of, the two side quests sandwiching the boss fight fit the same themes: comforting a dying woman by helping her see her baby one last time, and cheering up a sick kid by making him think his friend has come to visit. You could also stretch and make the connection that the Empress has a power over life, and Murphy utilizes electricity, the so-called spark of life. This battle awards the core of the P-organ, which is basically a heart, allowing it to become functional. This can be seen as symbolically giving life, but also it gives Geppetto's puppet the ability to grow. The Fool has learned the power of his heart from the Empress. The Emperor. I haven't brought it up yet, but the Major Arcana also have an associated element in astrological symbols, such as a ruling planet and a zodiac sign. The Emperor's planet is Mars, and its sign is Aries. Mars is often associated with fire, and Aries is the cardinal fire sign. The Emperor card is very much tied to fire. White on the nose for the King's Flame Fuko. The Emperor represents fathering and relates to leadership and decision-making skills, also authority, establishment, and structure. Reversed, it can be domination, excessive control, lack of discipline, and inflexibility. Fuko is responsible for building and deploying the king's puppet army, so the structure, authority, and discipline is inherent. He is the foundation on which the puppet's army rests on. For the reverse, he seems to be a bit of a zealot, demanding you conform to the King of Puppets' ways and that the impure be burned. His fighting style also seems to lack discipline a bit as well. Crossing this hurdle sees Vanini take refuge in the hotel and unpack his equipment, giving you the ability to build and modify Legion arms, attach special grindstones, and a wealth of authoritative knowledge from the man himself. The Fool is bumped against the rules and rigid structure of the Emperor, and learned to use them to his advantage rather than to view them solely as obstacles. The Hierophant represents formality and knowledge, and stands for religion. Reversed, it can be breaking taboos, rebellion, and nonconformity. It's Archbishop Andreas, and honestly this one is so on the nose I don't think I need to explain much, as he fits the card on a face value. The Hierophant is basically a holy man, and Andreas is a holy man. We don't really need to dig too deep to find him representing the card's reverse either, as the first time we see him, he's eating people, arguably one of the biggest taboos of all. Further, the Archbishop is a man of faith who has lost himself completely to greed. Crossing the Hierophant off the list teaches P how to pray, if you did the corresponding quest, and literally puts him on the pilgrim's path. The Fool has learned the quiet power of faith. The Lovers represents choice. Here the individual's consciousness has finally surfaced. It also represents love, kindred spirits, passion, partnership, trust, and siblings. The Lovers are the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. They're a tight-knit group that deeply cares for each other. Despite being an opportunistic group of stalkers, they choose to put each other's safety over personal gain, like when choosing to sneak gold coin fruits rather than take them by force. Leading up to the fight, you also get the choice to partner up with the Black Cat and Red Fox, even though they don't do much to repay the trust you put in them. Reversed, the card represents separation, distrust, and bad choices. We can see this representation in the group as well. The Black Rabbit Brotherhood carry around a coffin with the word liar painted inside of it. The liar's coffin. Not so subtly implying that they kill liars. And although they seem to be doing alright until they come up against Geppetto's puppet, they've arguably made some poor decisions that have left them infamous and wanted criminals in Krot. After defeating them, we enter their hideout and find Carlo's portrait, which can be seen as Geppetto's puppet's individual consciousness surfacing. It's the first concrete evidence that we get that he's more than he appears, and the painting is directly tied to his individuality as the golden lie grows out of it as he becomes more human. The fool begins to determine his own values so that he may become his true self. He is basically rewarded with himself for overcoming the Lovers. The Chariot represents victory for the individual, but only a momentary one. And that is exactly what we see upon defeating the King of Puppets. Geppetto's puppet overcomes a great adversary. His allies celebrate, and his enemies seem to be demoralized. At this point, there's also rumors that the alchemists have a cure for petrification disease. His journey is going smoothly thus far. He has been overcoming hurdles with almost no setbacks. However, this is short-lived as new challenges follow. The alchemists have yet to take the stage, and their cure isn't what it seems. The journey's road gets much rockier from this point. The King of Puppets shares some similarities to the usual illustration of the Chariot, which normally features a king or some sort of ruler or warrior riding a chariot. Romeo is riding a chariot of his own in the form of his mech suit. Upright, the card represents confidence, almost to the point of arrogance, and control, or at least the perception of being in control. The Chariot is a mirror of the fool's youthful confidence at this stage. Romeo naively believed he might stop the alchemist, just as Geppetto's puppet believes stopping him might stop the puppet frenzy. From the outside, the King of Puppets appears to be in control, and at times seems to believe it himself. But we soon learn that Geppetto is really pulling the strings. This powerlessness is a symbol of the card's reverse. Geppetto's puppet is awarded someone's necklace for defeating Romeo, which, when shown to Sophia, triggers a key change in him as well. This is when his hair grows, a sign of his growth so far. The Chariot is a milestone for the Fool, a major transitional step. In some interpretations of the Fool's journey, the Fool reaches adulthood at this point. His true challenges start here. Strength. Much like the Hierophant, this is another card that just fits its respective boss very well at face value. Strength being represented by the hulking Victor probably doesn't need much explanation. Upright, this card represents power and confidence, but the reverse can represent self-doubt and insecurity. Both sides can be seen in Champion Victor. He wears bravado on his sleeve, and the man is obviously strong. However, the insecurity is there, just under the surface as well. He takes the time to taunt Geppetto's puppet, calling him weak and unfit. At the phase change, he rallies himself by declaring himself the Chosen One, and when he loses, he continues to go on about how he's the pinnacle of life. He doubles down on his bluster when things are going poorly for him, and it seems more like he's trying to convince himself than anything else. Perhaps this is lingering embarrassment for previously having been laid low by sickness. According to Mr. E's lecture, the Strength card represents both passion and self-control. It is depicted as power with reason. Defeating Victor nets Geppetto's puppet the key to the Saintess of Mercy statue from Simon. Being able to use the statue is possibly the ultimate form of self-control. He can now respect allocations to his P organ, Legion arm, and his level, effectively giving him full control over his power at will. The Fool has learned to harness his strength. The Hermit. The green monster of the swamp represents the Hermit Major Arcana. The Archbishop lining up with the Hierophant was the primary spark for the idea of Liza P being the Fool's Journey. But the Hermit matching up with the green monster basically confirmed it for me. After all, the entire barren swamp area basically represents the Hermit card. I mean, it even has a section called Hermit's Cave, complete with a character called the Hermit. Upright, it represents solitude, withdrawal, introspection, and the search for wisdom, while reversed, it can symbolize isolation, loneliness, and feeling lost. We've got this by the boatload in Chapter 8. We have the Owl Doctor, a stalker who has lost his mind due to the alchemist experiments and isolated in a shack in the swamp, desperately trying to remember a name. The lonely broken puppet, who was attacked by frenzying puppets and left on his own, is eager to make a friend and learn about human emotions. Even Hugo has made his way out here to the sticks, solo, in search of answers. The green monster lives alone in the swamp, and although it's unclear how much higher thought is behind those yellow buggy eyes beyond hunt and consume, it spends its days sucking the ergo out of busted puppets. With the ergo being crystallized time and memories, the green monster could accurately be described as being in the pursuit of knowledge in its own way. Geppetto's puppet takes the golden ergo after defeating the green monster, and with it, the answer to his most pressing question at the moment. How can he power the submarine to get to the alchemist's secret island? He also leaves the swamp armed with a plethora of new information, most notably that the Alidoro that he knows is almost certainly a fake. The fool has left the hustle and bustle of the city for the solitude of the swamp and has returned wiser for it. The Wheel of Fortune is the corrupted parade master. Upright represents cycles, fate, fortune, luck, and unpredictability. And in reverse, it's repetition, external circumstances, and going around in circles. Honestly, a rematch with a boss that had its body taken over by a parasite is kind of a perfect representation of this card. It's a cycle, it's repetition, it's external forces being in control of the situation. Not only that, but we've already been through this area before. It definitely gives a feeling of going around in circles. And the earthquakes and attack on the hotel tack on the unpredictability the Arcana signifies. Stargazers are out of commission until the boss is defeated, building on that feeling of circumstances being out of one's control. Upon defeat, the corrupted parade master gives quartz again, but also the game's first full moonstone, a very rare and valuable item for weapon upgrades. Both repetition and fortune in one drop. The Wheel of Fortune represents fate and the opportunities that come with it. The hotel is being attacked as you fight the corrupted parade master, a terrible and terrifying ordeal for the occupants, but it comes with a silver lining. The passage needed to reach the Alchemist's Isle, that was previously locked from the other side, is made accessible because of the siege. Geppetto's puppet was stuck, but actions out of his control provided an opportunity forward. The fool finds everything is connected, and fate may have a hand in his destiny after all. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Justice represents the knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. It symbolizes fairness, honesty, accountability, and obviously justice, upright. It can represent revenge, injustice, unfairness, and consequences when reversed. Both sides of this arcana are apparent for the Black Rabbit Brotherhood grudge match. It's another boss fight that neatly fits the face value of the card. The siblings want revenge for what Geppetto's puppet did to the eldest. They would no doubt phrase it as seeking justice. The player is likely seeking to hold them accountable and get back at them for what they did to Hotel Krat. After winning this fight, Geppetto's puppet has the opportunity to introduce the fake Alidoro to the consequences of his actions, allowing him to make a decision about what his personal vision of justice is. The decision has been made, justice has been served. The fool continues along his path with a clean slate. The Hanged Man. Lexasia is the Hanged Man. This card represents sacrifice, waiting, and acceptance. But the reverse is inability to let go, stalling, and being stuck. Lexasia has given up so much for Simon and his cause, even electing to risk everything to be a guinea pig for an elixir that had killed so many, and had no successes up until that point. She was willing to sacrifice everything, and for it became what the alchemist described as the first whole being. Lexasia the complete. On the other hand, her ergo notes that there was one thing she was not willing to part with: her love for Simon. It's unclear how this affected her metamorphosis, but It did put her in a position to be sacrificed to slow down Geppetto's puppet. Defeating her leads the puppet to making an impossible decision of his own, as behind the boss is the room where Sophia's physical form is being kept. The blue fairy asks him to kill her and give her peace. It's interesting that the best results of this choice come from following the principles of the Hangman Arcana. Sacrificing Sophia causes an immediate change in Geppetto's puppet. His hair turns gray. It also gives him the opportunity to become the best version of himself at the end of the journey. Recognizing he can't save her and accepting her death as inevitable allows him the chance to at least take her ergo. Stubbornly holding on, trying to prevent the inevitable, results in her death anyway, and although this does not fully derail his journey, an opportunity has been missed and there will be consequences. To be clear, the Hangman is not about sacrificing everything or saying euthanasia is the best. It's more about acceptance, accepting that there are things you can't control, and also being able to let go. The fool has given up what feels like his entire world, no longer recognizing the one he now walks, yet he feels at peace as he moves on along his journey. Death. Spiritual death awaits the individual. Death is considered a transitional card. The old ends, and the new begins. Death is represented by Simon. This battle is essentially the end of the major conflict that has been in focus up until this point. He very well can be the final boss if Geppetto's puppet chooses so. The Death Arcana symbolizes endings, transformation, rebirth, and transition. Transformation and rebirth are kind of like Simon's whole thing. His whole purpose behind spreading the petrification disease and giving people the elixir that ends up turning them into carcass monsters is he's trying to force an evolution of humans, a transition achieved after death. He sheds his human form in attempting to transform himself into a god. Reversed, it signifies decay, deterioration, and clinging to the past. Decay and deterioration are evident on his body as he undergoes his transformation. He is also unable to let go of the past. Based on his own admissions, it seems his primary reason for trying to become a god and rid the world of lies is to prove his father wrong for deeming him a failure. For conquering his foe, Geppetto's puppet is given the Arm of God, an artifact with the power over death itself, if you believe the alchemists. This marks the end of one conflict as another is about to be born. Temperance is the card of balance, harmony, and moderation. Although he's been pulled in multiple directions, the fool has reached a moment of reprieve and given some time to center himself. The blending pieces of his diverse experiences combine to form a balanced whole. For Geppetto's puppet, this occurs on the elevator ride to Under the Abyss. His guide Gemini prods it, but as he descends, he contemplates his identity after everything he's been through. Is he a puppet, or is he a human? Or is he something more? Something greater than the sum of his parts? The fool is soon approached by the devil, who tempts him with an offer. The devil is Geppetto, which adds an extra layer of craziness to the prophetic rants the High Priestess was shouting on Alchemist Bridge.
You're the devil's puppet!
What could pass as an offhand insult was strikingly accurate. The fool was indeed the devil's puppet. Geppetto's offer? Give him your heart, and he'll make you a real boy. It's possible for Geppetto's puppet to not have enough humanity to even have a choice here, or the player may opt to give their heart anyway. Giving in to this trickery results in the bad ending immediately, if he has not grown enough to recognize temptation or gain the strength to resist it. The fool's journey ends here. However, if he refuses, he has the chance to earn a much greater reward, but must continue his struggle as he faces against his greatest challenge. The Tower card represents a great calamity, destruction, or a crisis. Geppetto unpacks the nameless puppet and attacks his puppet for refusing to give up his heart. If you won't offer it willingly, he will try to take it by force. This is a major blow to Geppetto's puppet. The man who he viewed as a father moments ago is now trying to kill him, but he still fights on. A heartbreaking disaster has befallen the fool, but he recognizes he must break free from the stagnant strings of his past in order to move forward into a better future. His values collapse on him. It seems as if he no longer has anything to believe in, but he then finds a glimmer of hope, and he is suffused with a serene calm. The star represents hope. Geppetto's puppet strikes what would be a fatal blow on most enemies, slicing off the top of the nameless puppet's head. This however, releases the killer puppet from its strings, and it only fights harder and more recklessly. Regardless, Geppetto's puppet has earned faith that it may win this clash. As the fool stands lost in the rubble of the tower, he finds the light of the star to guide his way forward. This bliss makes him vulnerable to the illusions of the moon. Fears arise, and he follows the dim path in his heart with trepidation. Geppetto's puppet appears to be winning the battle, and knocks back the reeling nameless puppet. The premature joy of the illusions of a seemingly inevitable victory causes him to briefly lower his guard, allowing the nameless puppet to knock him off his feet and move to strike a fatal blow. The tide has turned in an instant. Nearing the ultimate triumph, the fool loses his way in the borrowed illusory light of the moon. The illuminating light of the sun distracts from the moon's deceit and enlightens the fool on his true path forward. Geppetto, in an almost entirely selfish change of heart, steps in and takes the blow from the nameless puppet to protect Carlo's heart. This gives the puppet the chance to shake off his shock and strike the finishing blow on the nameless puppet. He is rewarded with a bright future, represented by the sun, which signifies true achievement. The fool has achieved greatness, but has he found his true self? Judgment awaits the individual at the end of his journey, as he looks back on the path he has traveled. Geppetto's puppet faces this judgment at the hands of his dying father, as he holds him in his arms. If he sees his puppet shed a tear for him, he truly sees him as a son and apologizes as he dies. The result is of course dependent on previous decisions, namely whether the puppet has sought out enough human experiences and if they chose to give Sophia peace. Failing this, Judgment will still leave the fool with a good outcome for his journey, although he has fallen just short of finding his true self and will no doubt feel as something is missing. However, if he passes, he is awarded the world. The world symbolizes fulfillment, completion, and mastery. This is the rise of P ending. Our fool has found his true self and his place in the world. Sophia, who was previously sacrificed at her own behest, is returned by having her ergo placed in a new body. Part of the metaphorical world he thought he had lost is returned to him because of his diligence. His journey has been completed, but soon the cycle will begin anew, because we never stop growing in life. There are always exciting new heights to reach and challenges to overcome. But for now, we can celebrate that our fool has broken free of his strings. He is Geppetto's puppet no longer.